With breaking news, a Fox News alert, we are awaiting remarks from National Security Advisor John Bolton. He is in Moscow meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Bolton's remarks come as Fox News has learned the White House is expected to announce the date and location now of a summit between the president and Putin tomorrow. So the announcement tomorrow, the news being made right now, Russian state media reporting the summit is going to happen. Right now, we don't know where or when. As we said, we're awaiting the White House to tell us by tomorrow, and we're watching to see what Advisor Bolton says, and we will bring you any new developments live when they happen. In this Fox News alert, Democrats on Capitol Hill rocked after a powerful New York congressman, after decades in his position, has lost his primary. Joe Crowley, chairman of the Democrat caucus, knocked out by a 28-year-old socialist newcomer, barely funded, in a primary upset nobody saw coming. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, co-anchor of After the Bell on the Fox Business Network, Melissa Francis. Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor, Katie Pavlich. Former deputy spokesperson for the State Department, Fox News analyst and host of Benson and Harf, Marie Harf. Get it? Benson and Harf. And joining us today in the center seat, Josh Holmes, Republican political strategist and former chief of staff to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Could have been a state, but it was a staff. He's here, he's outnumbered, and no doubt gleeful. After what happened with the Democrats last night, we'll get to the news. Shall we? Good to have you.
God, great to be here. Good day for
Reaction now pouring in after last night's primary shocker.
She's looking at herself on television right now. How are you feeling? Can you put it into words?
Nope.
Nope. Socialist. Socialist. Say it again. Socialist candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I can't wait to get Marie Harf on this. Appeared stunned that she brought down the 10-term congressman. Joe Crowley was widely considered a top candidate to replace Nancy Pelosi as Democrat House leader should the Democrats win back the House. President Trump seizing on the upset, tweeting, quote, "Wow." Big Trump hater Congressman Joe Crowley, who many expected was going to take Nancy Pelosi's place, just lost his primary election. In other words, he's out. That is a big one that nobody saw coming. Again, the president tweeting this. Perhaps we should have been nicer, or he should have been, and more respectful to his president, exclamation point. Ocasio-Cortez today talking about her win, while also being asked why she held back in directly confronting President Trump. Watch.
I felt like our party could be better, our message could be better, and that we could be better as a country. What we need to do is lay out a plan and a vision that people can believe in, and getting into Twitter fights with the president is not exactly, I think, where we're going to find progress as a nation.
News being made at this hour on this. Laura Ingle in New York in our newsroom with more. Laura?
Hi, Harris. Well, indeed, a huge night here. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who ran a bare-bones grassroots campaign, spent a lot of time knocking on doors she says have never been knocked on before to speak directly to people in her district and get her message out. And last night, as you saw, voters responded. Ocasio-Cortez has never before held elected office, but has experience in the political field, working as an organizer for Senator Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential bid, and also worked for the late Senator Ted Kennedy. Surrounded by her supporters is kind of the video of the night. She appeared surprised herself as the numbers came in when she saw her lead over incumbent Representative Joe Crowley. More than 57% of voters chose her over her opponent, who picked up a little over 42% of the vote. Crowley has been in Congress since 1999, and though a Democrat, had in the past been associated with groups aligned with President Trump and Republicans, the 28-year-old has been taking a victory lap today, making appearances, vowing to bring in urgency to the fight for working families, while also talking about the immigration issue, calling for the end of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Listen.
We are committing human rights abuses on this border and separating children from their families. And that, you know, is part of the structure of the agency. We can replace it, and we can replace it with a humane agency that is directed towards safe passage.
Today, Democratic House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi had this reaction to her win.
We
excited about another generation of people coming into the Congress. I am particularly excited that so many women are running across the country.
Ocasio-Cortez faces Republican Anthony Pappas in the November midterms. If she wins, she could become the youngest woman ever elected to a congressional seat. Harris?
Laura, always great to see you. Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
having me.
A wow from Melissa Francis and glee from Josh Holmes. Why are you so gleeful?
Well, welcome to today's Democratic Party. This is the one that party leaders have worked overtime to try to conceal from the American public for the last several years. There is no question that all of the energy, and we saw this in the Maxine Waters controversy that's come up lately, all of the energy in the Democratic Party is in a socialist, open borders, far outside the mainstream ideology that is galvanizing voters and winning these primaries. And, you know, we look back on, like, for example, Eric Cantor's loss in the Republican primary back in 2012 and how that sort of shaped, or 2014, I'm sorry, and how that sort of shaped Republican politics. Well, this is every bit as big in Democratic politics, if not bigger, because she was, you know, this defeat is just rocking Democratic circles.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison that's being made.
Yeah.
Marie?
It's interesting. Joe Crowley is someone I really supported. I thought he should be the next speaker if the Democrats take the House. But the first rule of politics is you have to keep your job. And he clearly did not take this race seriously enough. He skipped 2 debates with her. He sent a surrogate, a young Latina surrogate, to debate her in one, which is not good. And look, I think he was focused more on the leadership race he was about to enter into and did not focus on this race. I'll push back on Josh a little bit. This is a very liberal district. This is not the kind of candidates we're running in the Midwest, where I'm from, or in the South. This is not the Democratic Party across the country. But in this district, look, you cannot take your seats for granted. And the base is fired up in places like New York.
Well, 10 things stand out to me, and all of them are the terms that he served. I think a big issue, too, is just a sea change inside the party among people who want something different.
And
Look,
younger.
I don't like that she's
Well,
a
younger is
socialist.
different when
I
it
think
comes to this, although he's only 56. He is not in that upper crust of leadership in its 70s.
He was the next generation.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I am alarmed at the idea that we have a socialist now who has been elected openly, but I am happy about the idea that whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, being in Congress should not be a career. It should be a short-term thing. Clearly, the seat was taken for granted. He wasn't in the district working on the ground. She put in the work. She ran a grassroots campaign. She didn't take any vote for granted, and she worked and worked and worked and laid out a platform.
What does this tell Republicans now about running?
Well,
that it's about personality and energy. I mean, she had a lot of energy. She had a lot of personality. She went out and knocked on the doors and she connected with people. And it just means that is what's driving a lot of these races. The night was also a big success for President Trump. 2 candidates strongly supported by the president won their primaries. Governor Henry McMaster declaring victory in a runoff in South Carolina, and incumbent Congressman Dan Donovan securing the GOP nomination in New York. President Trump tweeting, "Congratulations to the 2 candidates," quote, "Congratulations to Governor Henry McMaster on your big election win. South Carolina loves you. We are all proud of you and Peggy." And this quote, "Tremendous win for Congressman Dan Donovan. You showed great courage in a tough race. New York and my many friends of Staten Island have elected someone they have always been very proud of. Congratulations." And Mitt Romney easily securing the Republican nomination for the Senate in Utah after tamping down his criticism of the president. Many say that was a winning strategy for the former Massachusetts governor. The president posting to Twitter, quote, "Big and conclusive win by Mitt Romney. Congratulations. I look forward to working together. There is so much good to do. A great and loving family will be coming to D.C." And today, President Trump heads to North Dakota to stump for Republican Congressman Kevin Cramer, who is challenging incumbent Democrat Senator Heidi Heitkamp in November. And Josh, I'll go to you. You know, it's interesting. President Trump, the Democrats had counted on him to be an albatross around the necks of Republicans. That doesn't appear to be the case.
No, ma'am. You know, what's interesting, the president is clearly the most powerful force in politics here. And whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you have to admit that. You know, McMaster, for example, when he was in South Carolina the night before the election, clearly he has an impact there. And now traveling to North Dakota, look, his ability to mobilize Republican voters is unparalleled. We've seen previous presidents of both parties able to galvanize some energy. What we have never seen is the sort of polarization that President Trump is able to deliver in terms of vote for his Republican Party. He has almost a 90% approval rating within the Republican Party. Now, if you look at North Dakota, if Republicans vote Republican, you got a new senator there in 2018, and that's what he's trying to accomplish.
Katie, the president was trying to make the point that you show up with Air Force One and you campaign for a candidate, and that really makes a big difference for them. Do you think that these races told us that, or his approval rating among Republicans, which Josh mentioned?
Well, the president's strategy has always been to encourage people not to take for granted the situation on the ground, and that no seat is necessarily a safe seat, and that they have to work if they're going to turn over a blue Senate seat, especially. He's been hammering Democrats through his Twitter feed, saying we need more Republicans, both in the House and the Senate, to get through his agenda. He's been very clear about saying, you know, come to vote whenever you can. On the campaign trail for his own presidency, he said, I don't care if you're on your deathbed, make sure you come to vote. Right. So this is his own way of really galvanizing voters to get them out to the polls for the people who are running, but not just for them, for his own agenda.
And we'll see if it works in a general election, because primaries are one thing in the Republican Party. We will see if the president can translate that into general election wins. Interestingly, Heidi Heitkamp has been willing to work with the president, and the president has actually said nice things about her.
Absolutely.
Which is one of the reasons he's there campaigning for her opponent today, because I think her Republican opponent was like, wait a second, we need you to help the team out here. So this will be interesting. Heidi Heitkamp is one of these senators who's been willing to cross the aisle to work with the president. She's pretty well liked back home. This will be an interesting race to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly the president would prefer somebody who's with him 95% of the time instead of 45% of the time, which is why he's there. But, you know,
we'll see if it works.
In a general election, you got to remember the states that are up, right? When you look at Montana, you look at, you know, Indiana, West Virginia, Missouri, North Dakota, all of these states have one thing in common, and that's that President Trump carried them by double digits in 2016.
Okay. So we are awaiting remarks from National Security Advisor John Bolton in Moscow after his meeting with Vladimir Putin to discuss a summit between President Trump and the Russian leader. We're going to bring you that live just as soon as it happens. Plus, a big day on Capitol Hill as anti-Trump FBI agent Peter Strzok takes questions from the House Judiciary Committee whether lawmakers will get clarity on the bias inside the Bureau and how it could impact the Russia investigation going forward.
Peter Strzok is at the center of a great deal of controversy with his bias reflected in the text that he exchanged with Lisa Page, another FBI employee, are just absolutely stunning.
He is doing a face-to-face with the future event. About 100 millennials and Generation Z, that's even younger, for those of us keeping count and raising children. What are their issues, the youngest generation? The president having them at the Executive Office Building, which just sits as you face the White House to the right of the White House in the South Auditorium there. And they'll be talking about those issues for the next generation. Now, interesting timing, because we were talking about the Democrats, socialists winning in a primary against longtime 10-term Congressman of New York, Joe Crowley, and the conversation about the younger generation that's being had across the political aisle because of that stunning upset last night. But now the president taking the mantle with the millennials and Generation Z, going to talk about that. Now, there's some other things going on, potentially a summit with Moscow and Putin. So with that, we're also expecting to hear from Ambassador and now National Advisor to the President, John Bolton, coming up now. He has just met with President Putin of Russia. So it's possible that our president will be asked about this. But as we watch this coming into focus here, what they're doing is a news conference with Bolton talking about Putin. Josh?
Well, it's an incredibly important dynamic that we're watching here. And I think You know, me personally, I couldn't be more satisfied with the fact that we've got Bolton over there doing negotiation.
He was very critical of Putin.
That's right.
Very.
That's right. And, you know, look, for all of the sound and fury of the Russia investigation, we've got the right people doing the right things here, and I have utmost
Well, let's
confidence
see what he's
in
doing.
Ambassador Bolton, now National Security Advisor Bolton.
Yeah. So they've
Rigging
got
the next election, Marie.
That's right.
No, we'll see what Bolton is doing. It'll be interesting to hear
rigging the next
what
election.
he's
They're rigging the next
First of
election
all,
right now.
First of all, the Russians are trying to interfere in the 2018 election.
Bolton's helping. It's all obvious.
No. It's not funny that the Russians are still trying to interfere in our elections, guys. It's not like.
Well,
I
I don't think anybody's laughing with that.
It'll be interesting to see what topics Bolton talks about. Does he talk about Ukraine? Does he talk about Syria? Does he talk about other issues like cybersecurity? It will be very interesting what he focuses on in this press conference.
I think more important than what he focuses on in this press conference is the fact that they're going to be sitting across the table from somebody who means business. And Marie, it's not your fault. It was not you, but the weak-kneed, wimpy administration and people that we sent over there before, whether it was John Kerry or it was Hillary Clinton or it was President Obama himself, that signaled they had nothing to back up any words that they might say, drawing red lines and then letting people walk right over them. We have been walked all over, all around the world, and this is a group of people that sit across the table from Putin and his cronies, and they know that we mean business and will follow through.
Well, and again, to bring up the point, I mean, Bolton has not been somebody who has been pro-Putin by any stretch of the imagination. So not only are we sitting across the table from people who came to play, they're sitting across the table from people who came to play in Bolton.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
Nor has anybody been pro-Putin, right? We've lived under this guise that somehow the Trump administration is a mouthpiece for the Putin regime, which is completely ridiculous.
Well, the president has called him someone who was strong and had, you know, kind of neutral words about him.
Yes.
But we also remember the back and forth between Mitt Romney and then candidate Barack Obama. I mean, Romney tried to tell him the importance of Russia.
That's exactly right.
So real quickly, I'm just going to cut in. Oh, nope. Now we're going to come back out and talk. So we're waiting for this actual news conference to begin before just kind of the back and forth. Go ahead, Josh.
Well, there was one interesting news development this week that I don't think received a lot of coverage, and it was the revelation that national security advisors, particularly cybersecurity officials within the Obama administration, were given a stand-down order at one point during, after this entire election thing started. And so once we knew that the Russians were actually trying to infiltrate the elections here in the United States, you know, in aftermath, the Obama administration is trying to say, well, we didn't send a congressional letter. There's lots of people who didn't want us to act. It turns out, what we found out this week, within the Obama administration, they were given direct orders to stand down and not confront Russia with counter cyber attacks. And it's really, I think that deserves more.
Let's listen and watch John Bolton, National Security Advisor, live in Russia.
Приехать сюда и договориться о времени проведения личной встречи президента. И завтра будет сделано официальное заявление одновременно по московскому и вашингтонскому времени о месте и дне проведения этой встречи.
And with any luck, I won't give away either of those pieces of information today, so that the Kremlin and the White House can announce them tomorrow.
И если мне очень повезет, я очень постараюсь, я сумею не разгласить эту информацию сегодня здесь, с тем, чтобы завтра Кремль идет, я очень постараюсь, я сумею не разгласить эту информацию сегодня здесь, с тем, чтобы завтра Кремль и Белый дом одновременно сделали это заявление.
And I should also say I was pleased to be able to meet with Mr. Gianni Infantino.
So the National Security Advisor, John Bolton, we're kind of playing, and there's a slight delay, too, between the translation and the question. But the important nugget that you just heard there from Bolton was that there will be an announcement of a summit between the United States and Moscow tomorrow. He's confirming that. He said he doesn't want to step on what the White House wants to announce in terms of location and exact time and all of that, those details. He said he doesn't want to step on that. You heard a follow-up question in Russian, which we were trying to kind of listen to, but it's difficult to kind of go back and forth. He said, so summit, yes, details tomorrow. So we're watching for that. The National Security Advisor in Moscow meeting with Putin, and now this news conference to tell us, A, about that meeting, but the most important nugget about it is that our two countries are going to have a summit. This is huge news. It's breaking on Outnumbered. We're bringing it to you. Now, the primary shocker, rocking Capitol Hill, which I said the president might even speak at. We don't know atop his remarks as he meets live in the White House now. We've got a crew there. A Democratic heavyweight losing his primary to a 28-year-old political newcomer, a socialist inside that race beating the long-term Democrat. What this means for Democrats and what this could say about the critical midterms and what it means for strategy for Republicans. Stay close.
The stunning upset raising new questions about the Democratic Party and Nancy Pelosi's future after Joe Crowley, widely thought as a potential member for the Speaker, was defeated in his primary by a 28-year-old political newcomer, the powerful chair of the Democratic caucus, losing by double digits to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a self-described Democratic socialist who worked for Bernie Sanders. Right now, the top three House Democrats, Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, and Jim Clyburn, have been in Congress for a combined 93 years, and not one of the trio is under 77 years of age. California Democrat Eric Swalwell, who at the age of 37 is a spring chicken in comparison, and co-chairs his party policy committee, looking at the positives in Crowley's crushing defeat.
I don't think they should be nervous, and I think they have invited me to the table. I sit at the leadership table. John, I'm the youngest one on the team. I think we need more people now at that table, and that's happening.
In the meantime, political reporting about jockeying as the Dems search for a new caucus chair. Several names bandied about, including Linda Sanchez, current vice chair of the caucus, and the number 5 behind Crowley. Maria, you're pointing to the big screen as we point out those names.
So Sherry Bustos is the woman in the middle, I guess, not on the end. She's from a rural district in Illinois. She is fantastic. I think she's an up-and-comer. She's good at working with the moderate wing and the more liberal wing of the party, and she has a really good message about where the party should go. I would also add Seth Moulton from Massachusetts to that list. He's a veteran, a combat veteran. He gets national security issues. So look, Joe Crowley, I really like. I wish he would have been the next speaker. Unfortunately, that's not to be. We have younger members of the party already in Congress and running across the country who I think are doing a good job at shaping what's coming next after Pelosi, Hoyer, and Clyburn.
Josh, you're dying.
Well, that's the key point is after Pelosi.
Yeah.
Right? Which I'm not sure there's ever going to be an after Pelosi at this point, right? I mean,
which comes first, after McConnell, after Pelosi?
Doesn't the president call her a secret weapon?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think there's very few people on the face of the planet that have galvanized more Republican energy than Nancy Pelosi has, and what she's presiding over now is basically an ungovernable party. I mean, we're dealing with factions here led by the Maxine Waters voices that are actively confronting and assaulting members of Congress, staff for the Trump administration, cabinet
Not
members.
assaulting. I mean, let's be.
Well, I mean, I saw some video of Elaine Chao last night that was pretty close.
Secret Service for a White House press secretary. When you have a wife of Mitch McConnell, your old boss, saying, you know, give my husband some space. Why don't you get... When you have a situation where a sitting member of Congress calls to attack...
And she shouldn't have. She shouldn't have,
right?
Harris. She shouldn't.
It's mob mentality, whether it actually galvanizes a mob, but it appears that potentially it could. When you have that situation, I think it's fair for Josh to absolutely say what he said.
Staffers in our administration also had to have Secret Service protection. This is a far-left issue. It's a far-right issue.
When was the last time that press secretary had...
there were staffers in our administration.
Not talking about that. I'm talking about the person who is the voice.
Yes, and people at her level also had to have
every day
protection, Harris. It doesn't make it okay. None of it's okay. But I think that what I was saying to Josh is everyone's now talking about Maxine Waters. Also talk about the fact that all of the Democratic leadership came out against what she said, which I also think was important.
Where people, staff had protection, you say, and that's not an anomaly, but not because another sitting member of Congress called.
Because of threats, because of ongoing. I had death threats mailed to my house, Harris.
And what about the people in her constituency, those who don't necessarily agree with her?
This rift in the Democratic Party between the establishment, which is Nancy Pelosi, people who have been in Congress for 20, 30 years, and this new up-and-coming faction. And although the district in Queens is very localized, it's very socialist, it's packed full
Very
of
liberal.
young people, extremely liberal, socialist, is not representative of the party as a whole. However, she worked for Bernie Sanders, who is mainstream in the Democratic Party now. He's not some outside figure on the fringe of the party. He is a leading voice in the party.
He
almost won the nomination.
And that's why he was, unfairly shut out from that nomination. And I think that there are people on the left who haven't forgotten that they felt like they put their energy behind Bernie Sanders and that he was unfairly hobbled by the Clinton machine. And they still are carrying that over to this day. And that idea that it isn't a fair race within the Democratic Party, that the winners are pre-chosen, and that that's not fair. And that's what we saw in this election. I won't sit for leaders that are chosen for me by the party establishment. It was the same thing on the right. I won't sit and swallow leaders who are being force-fed to me by the establishment in either party. And that's a huge change, right, Josh, that we've seen on both sides?
Yeah, look, it would be a grave mistake for Democrats to say this is a liberal district, it's a one-off, it's an aberration. What this is a discontent with the leadership of the Democratic Party that stretches far beyond the liberal, far beyond the ideological, into the very grassroots of what makes up the disparate coalitions of the Democratic Party. And I think what we're going to see, mark my words, is an impeachment movement, a abolish ICE movement, a much more radical left wing than we have seen develop at any point in the last probably 2 decades. And it's going to be all out in the open for people to witness. And I don't think that's a great thing for Democratic election prospects.
Messy, for sure. Well, that anti-Trump texter on Capitol Hill today facing questions from lawmakers. How will Peter Strzok answer for his texting saying they would stop Trump from becoming president? And many other questions about bias in the FBI. We'll hash it out.
The day House Republicans have been waiting for is finally here.
What would you tell the American public about
Infamous anti-Trump FBI agent Peter Strzok not answering questions on his way into a congressional hearing this morning. That's what you see on the screen. But he is now taking questions from the House Judiciary Committee behind closed doors. Strzok agreed to a voluntary appearance after Chairman Bob Goodlatte subpoenaed him last week. Goodlatte weighing in earlier today ahead of the big event.
The bias, which was clearly against Donald Trump and for Hillary Clinton, is reflected in the actions that were taken by the FBI in both those investigations. They leaned over backwards to give her special treatment that no other criminal suspect would receive. And in the Trump case, they leaned forward to launch an investigation, the roots of which we need to learn a lot more about. And we will hold a public hearing with Mr. Strzok in the very near future.
And tomorrow, FBI Director Christopher Wray and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein are set to testify publicly before the House Judiciary Committee. The two are expected to field questions about the DOJ and FBI's actions in the run-up to the 2016 election and findings in the recently released Inspector General report. Meanwhile, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham writing a letter to Rosenstein demanding more information about the role that Strzok and Lisa Page played in the Russia probe. Here's Graham last night on the story.
Well, what we know now is that the person in charge of the Clinton email investigation, Mr. Strzok and Ms. Page, were in the tank for Clinton and hated Trump. Now, did those two people start an investigation against the Trump campaign because they had a political bias, or was it based on legitimate evidence? My question is, what role did they play in the Russian investigation?
So, Josh, you are a veteran of the Hill. And a lot of the action on this issue now has moved to Congress. It's closed testimony today. We heard Chairman Goodlatte say that he will be having open testimony soon. What is the role here that Congress should be playing in having hearings? Should they be open? Should some be closed? How does Congress play a helpful and not partisan role?
Right. Well, I know the president would prefer if all of these were open, and I think most of the American people would too, but there's also a lot of classified information that could come up here, and I think probably safety first is the best way to handle this. I don't object to the fact that this initial testimony has been given behind closed doors, but I do think something significant could come of it. I mean, what we know is that Peter Strzok was incredibly biased about the way that he handled his business. What we don't know is how that influenced everything. right? How that influenced the Clinton investigation, how that ultimately influenced the Trump investigation in the Russia collusion case. You know, you can see where some of his testimony might be formative into what the ultimate conclusions here of this entire episode will be.
Well, Melissa, we've talked a lot about the fact that there's a closed hearing today, and so each side will come out and probably talk about it in very different ways. You've advocated for much more openness on this. Let the American people get answers to these questions, and so eventually, is that what's going to have to happen?
Well, I did hear one report that there's going to be a transcript from this, and I wonder how much of that we're going to be able to see or how much of it is redacted. You know, we don't want them to disclose sources and methods, but the things that have been shown so far that before they said it was sources and methods has been just an embarrassment. And I think it's been a very frightening time for people in terms of what the FBI and the DOJ is willing to do and our perception of it. And we need the confidence in those organizations restored. I think Peter Strzok, it's interesting. He seems like, I mean, if you looked at him walking in, he looked kind of exhausted. He was trying to smile. It seems like he has a story that he wants to tell, and I, for one, am really interested in hearing it.
Well, he has said he wanted to talk. I mean, the situation reached an incendiary
There's that video right there, by the way, of him going in that I was describing, and you can kind of look and judge for yourself.
The situation reached a rather incendiary point for him last week, and so he said, yeah, definitely he wanted to be part of this conversation. I think if you take a look at the situation, no matter which political party, if there was one that was leveraging and I've heard the word weaponize, but definitely leveraging its power against another based on bias or based on just wanting to keep their own jobs, no matter who was in the White House, and keeping certain people in and out of the White House. I still critically want to know what the plan was for Peter Strzok and Lisa Page to keep this president out of the White House. Was it a wider plan? They mentioned their boss, Andrew McCabe, the former FBI deputy director. Who at the agency knew about this plan? Was it just two lovers trying to out-text each other and impress each other?
That was it?
Well, I don't know. I'm asking questions. So was it any of these things? But I think we do need to know that. And every political party, since there seems to be socialism in the room now, too, with last night's win among the Democratic Party. But with every we should be thirsty, hungry to know how you can leverage these agencies, the DOJ or the FBI. And figure out what the punishment will be, the accountability will be, once we find out whether or not that's truly what happened. But right now, it's dirty. And one thing is for sure, a lot of stuff leaks, so we don't know what we'll find out.